Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Peter Clayton's behind the camera. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Welcome to The Garage, the Court of Public Opinion. We're here every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. And this is a posting we put on Facebook. And Andy Martin takes the audio from that posting and puts it all about the place as a podcast. So wherever you get your favourite podcasts. And I mean, there are podcasts on everything. Pete, have you noticed this?
Yes, it is.
Everything. I mean, it's either a folly or all of these people are going to fall by the wayside and there'll be about 4 or 5 or 6 or 26 podcasts that survive, because you get into that. I don't know how you'd find your way around and find the ones you want to listen to. But, you know, what do I know? In this modern technological age, not very much, it would seem. But Andy Martin is a genius. If you have an idea for a podcast, he is the man that you should see. I don't know if I could see clearly enough. Hang on. I'm sorry, I'll revert to this. It really does help, but come next week, it'll be fine. What was I saying? Andy Martin, yes. If you've got an idea for a podcast, it could be the most brilliant thing. It must be like writing a book. You come up with an idea, and he is the man to help you through all of the obstacles and difficulties. He's a genius, and I'm extremely lucky to be surrounded by people who are much smarter than me. Peter Clayton and Tony Denton and Andy Martin. The secret of the whole thing, whether it's our podcast and Facebook posting or it's the broadcast on jeremycordeaux.com tomorrow. Do join us from 9 o'clock, by the way. A couple of things that are interesting. Well, more than a couple. In Melbourne, the City Council, which is a lefty council, no doubt about it, has voted to change the name of streets and roads. Also, public places and tourist attractions. And you really wouldn't want to be a road scholar to know to what they were going to change these established names to. Aboriginal names. When is this going to stop? When is it going to stop? They will choose, that is the Melbourne Council will choose. Why? I suppose because they can. How, when Aboriginals don't have any written language, can you actually have a name that you can attribute to a street or a site or a location? How can you do that? I know that right up there, here in Adelaide, on the side of the Women's and Children's Hospital, they've not called it the Women's and Children's Hospital. It's some incomprehensible Aboriginal name. But it can't be an Aboriginal name because there was no language that you could write it in. What in God's name are we doing? We could ask the same thing about this ADHD thing. ADHD. Now, you know that there are activists who are trying to get as many people onto the disability support pension and the NC. I always get it confused with the television program. The NDIS. That's it. And just in case you didn't think this was a real garage, there's a car coming in. There you go. All right. Thank you. Anyway, the idea of taking people who are diagnosed as having ADHD and putting them on, I imagine for life, on the NDIS is bizarre. What is it with this government? What is it with the social workers? What is it with their medical referrals? I have no idea. How could it be? ADHD sufferers have doubled in the last few years. Doubled. It's only been around for a few years. I think, well, I say a few years, 25 years. It just suddenly appeared. What absolute rubbish. When I was growing up, they were called naughty children. To me, it reminds me of repetition strain injury. I'd never heard of repetition strain injury, but then there was this huge epidemic of repetition strain injury. Do you remember repetition strain injury? Suddenly it was everywhere. And then it disappeared. Nobody said anything. Nobody questioned. I don't think it ever existed. I think it's Stockholm Syndrome, mass hysteria, groupthink. I don't know what it is. But I really resent the fact that it seems to be an ongoing burden upon the taxpayer. Now, you might like to take me to task over that tomorrow morning at the dining room table. Tune in. I'll give you the number. I saw, with a degree of anxiety, in Iran, a woman has been found guilty of adultery and has been sentenced to death. Human Rights Brigade haven't said a word.
That's still by stoning?
Oh, yes, that's the favoured means of dispatching women. Beheading is the one they use for males, but Pete, I don't know if you know the gruesome details, and I don't want to get censored by Facebook, but what they do is they dig a hole, not a grave, but a hole in the ground, and they place the woman in the hole, so the only thing that is above the ground is her head, and then they throw stones at her head.
Yeah.
But apparently, according to the United Nations, well, nothing. Dead silence. Dead being the operative word, I suppose.
Can I just mention there's a film called The Stoning of Soraya M. The Stoning of Soraya M.
I don't know it.
True story. I think it was two French journalists were going through, I think it was Iran, and they witnessed this. They witnessed her own children stoning her.
My God.
And it was trumped up. She did nothing wrong. It's a true story, the stoning of Soraya M.
Well, I think it's a disgrace. All the human rights people, the United Nations, dead silence, the left-wing media, nothing. Have you heard in the media about this woman? Oh, it's cultural, they'll say. It's cultural. Anyway, I think they're barbarous people. And do you know, regardless how people are dispatched, stoning to death or beheading, I find it very interesting that there is no penalty for a man who commits adultery. Men cannot commit adultery. I'm assuming because men are assumed to be doing it all the time. I've got no idea. But if you can put some meat on those bones tomorrow morning around the dining room table, jeremycordeaux.com, I'd be grateful. King Charles is in, he was in, I don't actually know, because as I told you the other day, we were recording 3 Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in advance because Pete's going in for some medical tests. The last time I looked, King Charles was in Kenya. I'm not exactly sure why he went, but nevertheless, he went with deep regret for the things done in the past. I mean, how can we have regret for things that happened decades ago? There was no apology, and quite right, because that is something for the ministry, not the king. But he was at his diplomatic best. I think he's doing a very good job of being the monarch. And it's important. Kenya is important because it was here that his mother was told that her father had died and that she, in fact, was now the queen. But please, let's be honest. The king couldn't say this. And the media won't say this. Probably because they're not old enough to remember. But I remember the Mau Mau uprisings of the 1950s. Horrific. Terrible. Savage. These people were barbarians. They killed, they tore the hearts out of white farmers while they were still alive. They skinned people alive. Now, if bad things were done by the British, and I don't know, but I don't doubt mistakes were made, I don't doubt bad things were done, but the Mau Mau had all of this down to an art form. Only to be repeated, of course, years later in Rwanda. I'm sorry, these people are not owed an apology. But the problem is no one's old enough to remember the 1950s. Sorry, I do. That's simple. Pete, have I got time or?
Yeah.
Let me just touch on one other thing quickly. That tragic and undoubtedly fatal shark attack at Streaky Bay here in South Australia, going back a few days, week. Honestly, look, going into the world of one of the most primeval killing machines, the great white shark, would take what? Recklessness? I mean, courage? Stupidity? I am so sorry. But this is a world-famous breeding ground for the great white. I would say it to you, this fly, who tempts fate every single time we come down here. I mean, I know you from somewhere, and I don't know where. It's extraordinary. This fly. You couldn't make it up, Pete.
No.
You couldn't. No, seriously, I would say it to Brittany Higgins. I would say it to my own children. I'd certainly say it to myself. Don't be there. Just don't be there. Now, some birthdays, if I can see, by the time we join you again here in the garage, which will be Monday, my eye will be perfect. Cambodia's National Day. Hedy Lamarr was born in Austria. That was in 1913. Hedy Lamarr. Listen, go away, you nasty fly. Charles de Gaulle, French president. He died at the age of 79 in 1970. Oh, and the Berlin Wall came down. Who was that girl who sang West of the Wall? Tony Fisher. West of the wall, we know we'll fall, west of the wall. Came down in 1989. After 28 years... Go away!
I do have a can of Mortine.
No, I don't want you to kill it. I think that's bad karma. No, but David Bowie was at the Adelaide Oval in 83. Carl Sagan was born, the astronomer, in 1934. Sigmund Romberg died, the Hungarian-born composer of operettas, including The Student Prince. Drink, drink, drink. I've got that somewhere. Mario Lanza.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mario Lanza. That was in 1951. He died. Wendell Corey, 54 years old, Woodlands, California. Actor, star of the TV series The 11th Hour. Waterfront too, I think he was... he's a great movie star. A lot of things he did, Wendell Corey. He died in 1968 on this day. Herbert Thomas Kalmus. He was born in Massachusetts. He was the guy who invented Technicolor film. Wow. Dylan Thomas died in New York in 1953, drank himself to death. Most Irishmen and Welshmen did, it would seem. And the announcement that Sir Mark Oliphant, KBE, would be the new governor of South Australia. He was coming from Berkeley, California, and he said, to use an Australian expression, I'm happy to give it a go. That was in 1971. In Sydney, Leon Uris said, I want to write one good book before I die. 1971. He had written fantastic books all his life. Oh, and I'll give you one more. The East Coast blackout in the United States of America caused a massive electrical power failure. Started in western New York State. Cut electrical power to each of the northeastern US, or to much of the northeastern USA, and Ontario and Quebec in Canada. More than 30 million people affected from 2 to 3 hours. I was thinking it was going to say 2 to 3 days. Anyway, that goes back in 1965. Anyway, thank you very much for viewing the Court of Public Opinion, ladies and gentlemen, and I do look forward to hopefully your company tomorrow as we live stream jeremycordeaux.com from the dining room table. We take your calls, we got guests, and I'll be in much finer fettle than I was last Friday. Thank you very much for viewing the Court of Public Opinion. Believe in yourself, and goodbye for now.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.